Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us. We have a lot to talk about this evening for a couple of reasons. Well, this is our Tuesday night live show that we do. We didn't do one last week because I was on a special project, which we won't get into tonight. We can talk about that probably on our Patreon show that will immediately follow this episode of Crime Talk Live, Tuesday Night Live. So if you're not a Patreon and you want to hear about my secret project, become a Patreon. Join me after this. Within minutes of getting done here, we'll go over to the Patreon page. So a couple of housekeeping things we need to do. So first of all, thank everybody for being here. We are on YouTube, Facebook, and Roku this evening. Now, we also have set up a page at Rumble, and they are currently transferring all of our videos over to Rumble. We're still going to stay here, but really what it boils down to is that, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, we know Google, company, that owns YouTube, Alphabet owns Google, affectionately as they're known, and YouTube, they just got sued for, antitrust stuff. And frankly, YouTube's been great. It's been good to us over the years, but not so much really when you really look at it. They routinely demonetize our videos from the word go. And, it takes them 24 to 48 hours to say, hey, that video that you put up that was set up for like a daily type of vlog that you're doing. Yeah, sorry about that. And everything you said was okay about it. That's probably the thing that drives me the craziest when it comes to YouTube is that you can never speak with anybody there. I've spoken with one representative at YouTube the entire time, and he was saying, well, here's all the ways that you can have other ways that your people can, your subscribers can send you money. And I'm like, I'm not begging and asking for money. I just want to get paid for my views that get going. So can I talk to somebody? And they're like, oh, I don't know who to talk to on that. So YouTube drives us crazy. So Rumble, they tell us we'll be doing all of them. Don't panic. We're still going to be here, but you can also go to Rumble. And if you do have a Rumble account, go over there and subscribe. We're literally brand new. It was literally set up yesterday. And there's this thing where they transfer all of our videos over there. But we can't go live on there until we have, I don't know, whatever the number of subscribers are that's required. So if you have an account, think of us next time you're over there. But we'll still be coming live every Tuesday night here as well. All right. So thank you for that. Also, you know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't. Like if you do. Hit that little bell so you receive notifications when we go live or put up new content. And remember, you can always listen to us on any of your favorite podcasting apps. And this month, we got off to a slow start with the holiday, and then I had to travel for work. But man, we're crushing it on the downloads on the podcasting site. That's amazing. We're over 1 million downloads on that, which is I always find that interesting because I saw there's 2 million podcasts out there. And if you get more than 50 downloads a day for each episode, you're like in the top 1% of all podcasts. So we're very humbled by that. Thank you all for listening. All right. What are we going to talk about tonight? Well, there's a little bit of disagreement going on out there in the legal world, and it's all in relation to this Bryan Kohberger guy. We brought you the story. We brought you the story today on our regular show. So if you haven't watched it yet, you should check it out. But I'm going to explain what my position is. And remember, reasonable people can disagree. And you say, Scott, what is this Kohberger guy? His preliminary hearing isn't even set out until the end of June. He just got himself a new attorney, or his attorney's been appointed, the Office of the Public Defender up there. And what could possibly be going wrong? They're just getting the discovery. Well, there's an issue. Okay. And it's called a conflict of interest. Now, certainly people can differ when it comes to the rules of ethics. Okay. I have seen cases, or I personally know, I didn't represent them because I said that's a conflict. Okay. Let me tell you the story and then we'll get to it. All right. Had somebody I knew, a fellow attorney, was representing somebody that was charged with, say, for example, a drug offense. That drug guy gets whacked in a very hot and fiery way. Let's just put it that way. Or at least it was probably quick, and then they just burned everything after that. So anyway, then the friend gets hired to represent the guy that did the whacking. That he also represented the guy that had the drug case. Who's there to object? I mean, what client confident? The client that's dead certainly is not going to object to that, right? Family doesn't, but the DA's brought it up and said he's representing the guy that apparently killed his client. And I swear, the court at the trial court level said no conflict. I was like, okay. And he was a friend. He's a friend of mine. And I was like, why are you doing that? Like, just don't do it. It's going to create issues. And, the guy goes to court, he gets convicted, does his appeals. And what the first issue that they raise after all the appeals are exhausted? Ineffective assistance of counsel, conflict of interest. You like that other guy better than you liked me. You held back at trial. And, how could you have done that? You weren't looking out for my best interest. You were really looking out for that other guy. So here we have a case where in Idaho, where Brian Kohberger gets appointed the public defender. And every time that somebody gets appointed to a case, we'll just talk about the public defender's office. And I've never worked in specifically the public defender's office, so I'm not going to say, but this is generally what happens when a case is filed. When a case gets filed, a case number is set up in the court. They say, hey, here's a new filing. Court assigns it a case number. And the public defender is notified, particularly if somebody's going to be in custody. And here it's a high-profile case. Everybody in the area has been talking about it. And they bring up the name Kohberger, right? So it also turns out that Miss Kernodle, who's obviously a victim in this case, and everybody has known about her victim status, and somebody at the Idaho State Public Defender's Office never said, hey, wow, that feels so terrible. I feel terrible because we represent a Kernodle. I wonder if that's the exact same woman. Oh, we should probably check. Oh, no. That's Zaina Kernodle's mother that we represent on a drug case. And they say, okay, well, that's too bad. But, I mean, what could mom possibly provide in this particular case? She's not going to be a witness. She wasn't there that night. You don't know. Okay. So normally when the cases are filed, a case is filed, at least under our rules, and it works very similar. They also file a list of witnesses. That list of witnesses is basically every person that has been interviewed, worked on the case if they're in the police department, investigator that has worked on it, and then they just continue to supplement to that original witness list. Sometimes there's a few witnesses. Sometimes there's literally, there could be 100, 150. It just depends on the case and the case that matters. All right. So now you have a situation. Public defender already represents Kara Kernodle on a drug case. Apparently represented kind of the family over the years. And it's not just, Miss Taylor, who now represents Brian Kohberger, is the head of the office and okay, that's her name. She apparently actually represented Kara Kernodle, sat down, had attorney-client meetings with her, maybe even gone to court. Okay. So normally when that case comes in, you have somebody in your office that runs a conflicts check. And sometimes conflicts are easy. You're like, oh, I know that guy. He's a co-defendant. Oh, I represented him. Sometimes you have to dig a little deeper. Sometimes you type it in the computer, it doesn't come up, or it's like, oh, it's a similar name. We represented somebody. And you're like, oh, that's a brother. No conflict. So, who knows? But if you have a witness list and it shows up that a witness that you've previously represented is on the witness list, you got to decide whether you have a conflict. Well, how do you decide whether you have a conflict? Well, what are they going to testify to? Is it something completely periphery? No big deal. They were simply there because they were standing on a street corner and they saw, maybe a car go by really quick. Okay. Not that big of a deal. What client confidences can you use? But if you represent the new guy and it's somebody's witness credibility is at issue, you could potentially use that information that you learned from your previous client against them. And you can't do that. And the problem is you just really never know exactly what confidence may have been revealed that it could be later used against them. Okay. So as a general rule, and I'm telling you, 99.9% of the time, if you see a previous client that you have represented, you say, I got a conflict. I previously represented somebody. And the court's like, okay, I get it. Understand. If they're a retained client, you give the money back. Sorry, can't do it. Let me refer you to somebody that can do it. But sorry, you can't do it. And like I said, we're not talking about a case where, it's a DUI and you previously represented the guy that was in the back seat that says, hey, your client's drunk, or he wasn't drunk. Maybe you could swing it. But when you're talking about a quadruple murder burglary case where you have four people dead because of the alleged actions of Mr. Koberger. Obviously, we'll give him the presumption of innocence. I think it's not that simple. Now, some people can disagree with me. Now, Lori Hellis, who she sent me an email. She put out a little addition in her email that she puts out. And she's saying, not a conflict. And I said, you may be right. But I disagree. I wouldn't do it. Now, why would Ms. Taylor, the head of the public defender's office, want to keep the Koberger case and get rid of a little drug case? Well, because she has the opportunity of becoming a household name, representing one of the most recognizable cases going on in the world right now. Maybe if it was me, I'd say, yeah, maybe probably like to do that. And I've had situations like that. Hell, I've had that very recently where it was like people are like, hey, can't you represent the co-defendant because they really like you, blah, 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 blah. And I mean, it gets super tricky. And what it amounts to, and I'll explain this, why I just wouldn't do it. I get it. It's the biggest case walking through your door. But guess what? You're at the public defender's office. There's going to be other cases. I get it's the big one. You don't want the big one to get away. But why risk the ethical complaint down the road? It's that simple. So, first thing, obviously, there's an attorney-client relationship established between Kara Coronado and the public defender's office, specifically Miss Taylor. She dealt with him. Yes, the cases are not connected as far as we know, but guess what? Who knows what the defense could come up with? Oh, maybe this was something drug-related, retaliatory. I don't know. Mom apparently is involved in maybe some drug culture. Who knows? She got charged with drugs. And I don't know what it was. Maybe it was something to appeal about. We don't know. But I'm telling you, the defense may have to get very creative. And what happens if that means that they're throwing out theories that could potentially go against Kernodle? And I don't know. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe Scott, you're just too worried. You're being too conservative on this, but I don't think I am. So remember, conflict of interest, obviously, right? You always have that continuing confidentiality. So an attorney's duty to preserve a client's confidential information does not cease when the representation ends. Bottom line. So whatever Ms. Kara Kernodle told the public defender's office, that's it, right? And remember, you can have kind of an imputed conflict based upon a firm, right? If one attorney's out, they're usually all out. You can try to say, oh, we'll build a Chinese wall. This attorney will have no information. No one will discuss this case around him, and they can do that. It just doesn't work. And then you have the ethical rules. This isn't the first time this kind of stuff has come up, but generally, as under the rules of ethics, when a former client has imparted confidential information to a lawyer, the lawyer must not then oppose the former client in any matter in which the confidential information would be relevant, unless the former client consents after consultation. And what does consent after consultation? That means after independent counsel has talked to the clients and said, hey, sure, there's a conflict. And I'm, the confident or the impartial attorney is there to tell them of the conflict. And then the attorney says, yeah, it's your choice, but my advice is I wouldn't do it. And every time I've ever seen a situation where there's been a conflict, and there's been outside counsel provided, 99% of the time, it doesn't work out. Okay. And there's always somebody that thinks, well, we can work around this. And then you really have to ask yourself why. I mean, it's the public defender's office. They're not getting paid any more money, whether they keep this case and work on it for, 100,000 hours versus, if they're a private firm working on it at 100,000 hours. They're going to get paid the same salary regardless of the work that they do on the case. And like I said, I get it. I'd be like, oh man, this is the biggest case in America going on right now. I want this case, but it's not worth the potential conflict. So, and I get it. Under the rules, people are like, Rome point 7, conflict of interest, except as provided in paragraph B, a lawyer shall not represent a client if the representation involves a concurrent conflict of interest. A concurrent conflict of interest exists if 1, the representation of one client will be directly adverse to another client, or 2, there is a significant risk that the representation of one or more of the clients will be materially limited by the lawyer's responsibility to another client. So you would say, well, you know what? We can represent. If that's the test, then why not just leave somebody else from the public defender's office, keep Ms. Taylor off of Ms. Kernodle's case, and then just appoint somebody else in their office? Oh, that's right. Because they can have the same conflict from being in the same firm. So you can't do that. And let me ask you this. If the public defender's office didn't think that there was a conflict, why did they withdraw? Why did they appoint and even put in their motion conflict-free counsel? I'm just saying. And maybe a court will disagree. And like I said, I do not know all the answers. I'm just telling you, I wouldn't do it. It's going to create issues down the road. So even if you get counsel for Ms. Kernodle, which they've appointed a private attorney to represent her. And in the motion, they say conflict-free counsel has been appointed. Conflict-free, which means just by the very plain language of the words that a conflict existed. Okay. And we're not talking about a little run-of-the-mill case. We have a peripheral witness. And I get it. The Kernodles were not there that evening when their daughter was killed. However, it is a quadruple homicide where there is the possibility of the death penalty. Those attorneys are going to have to do, and they're going to have to dig up mitigation. Okay. And they're going to have to dig up mitigation, assuming the case goes forward against Kohberger. There's really no reason why it won't at this point. And let's say the state says we're going to make the ultimate punishment. The mitigation experts for the defense are going to go and talk to everybody, if they'll talk with them, right? They'll get all his information from his side of the family, but they'll probably do everything they can to talk to the families and say, hey, what is your position on the death penalty? So then you have a former client talking about it. So you have I'm just telling you, even if it's going to be, let's say there's a death penalty case and they put up their chronodals to talk about how lovely their daughter was, how full of life that she was. You just never know. I don't know. It's I wouldn't do it. I say, I say that you just basically you don't do it. That's my rule of thumb on that. As I used to tell my associates when there was an issue, when there's a conflict, and if you have to start breaking out the books to say, oh well, I think we can do this if we do this, this, and this, it's a conflict, and it never works out. And normally when anybody consents to some sort of conflict, you have to give them independent counsel. And normally the independent counsel is going to say, yeah, it's your choice. You can do what you want. But guess what? It's a conflict. Okay. But like anything, it's waivable. And you can do that. But like I said, I just wouldn't do it. That's just my humble opinion. I get it. It's great. It's a case. I mean, I had a case. We could have made lots of money, but there was a conflict. What do you do? Well, you do the right thing because you have to live by a couple rules. I tell my young associates as well, never met anybody worth going to prison for, and I've never been paid enough money to jeopardize my law license. Bottom line. I mean, it would have to be big, huge, like retirement money, like generational wealth retirement money, I guess, is what it would have to be worth. But even then, you just do not do it. So reasonable minds could disagree. I am a realist. I am a practical person. I don't want to engage in, law school exam type of things. Well, is it possible? Well, yes, it could be. And under this circumstance, listen, it's a conflict. If it wasn't, it was no big deal. Just appoint some, brand new public defender on the new case. Right. And guess what? There's one other person we haven't talked about. I mean, obviously it's the clients, right? What does Kara Zernoble want to take place? And how about old Brian Kohberger? He has to, I would say, be advised of the potential conflict. And then he's going to say, well, gee, my attorney was her attorney first. Yeah, she's not a direct witness to me. But what if, she really kind of bonded with her and likes her, and really maybe she likes me more than, or she likes, Miss Coronado more than she likes me. What if she's, what if I tell her something and she doesn't like me anymore because, she liked Mrs. Coronado and I'm accused of doing it. And I mean, it just creates issues. So my advice would be, not that I'm in Idaho, and I get it. There's a little bit different rules when it's a public defender's office, but not really. Okay. They're all pretty much the same everywhere. Maybe a little more, if it's family members or something like that. But the reality of it is the rules of ethics apply, and why risk it down the road for a conflict? I don't see it. It's not a good thing. It just creates more issues. And hey, what should the prosecutor do? Say, Judge, we think there's a conflict. Have a hearing on it. Create the record. See if Ms. Kernodle, as well as Mr. Koberger, consent to any conflict, that it can be waived in any such way. That's the way you resolve it at the trial level. But guess what? Just like I told you, an example of the case that I was familiar with where a guy I knew, like I said, he represented the guy that was selling the drugs. Then he was representing the guy that was accused of killing the guy that sold the drugs. That the guy that was accused of him actually, I think, probably referred the guy to him when he got caught with the drugs. And it was just a weird situation. And everyone was like, how is that not a conflict? How is that just not right? And they had a hearing on it, and the lower court level said, well, I think it's a waivable conflict. Obviously, the deceased guy isn't around, but the other guy, he's okay with it. I mean, I just don't know how you get around that. And then after conviction and after the appeals, first thing that was raised was ineffective assistance of counsel. And guess what? Because it had never been raised before. It wasn't raised on appeal. First thing, ineffective assistance of counsel. Guess what? The case got reversed. A conflict of interest. So, like I said, you got all these ethics rules. They're written by a bunch of people that, I don't know. We can agree to disagree. I respectfully see how other people can say, well, we can work around this. It's not a true conflict. I'm taking a much more conservative approach for whatever that is worth. And people can say, Scott, you're full of it. You don't know what you're talking about. Or maybe you're right. We'll just have to wait and see. All right. I think I saw a couple of super chats, but of course they went by while I was talking, and I wanted to finish my thought before I take a look at those. But let me see if I can pull those back up. Frank, do you know how I can pull up those super chats? Now, not that we, okay. Okay, here we go. Jake Chapman, $5 super chat. And not that we ask for super chats. However, it does make them a little easier to find. So we can answer those questions. I used to work at Chad Day Bells years ago. He got our boss believing all kinds of crap. He about lost his business, marriage, etc. Chad is nuts. Well, Jake, I appreciate that. He definitely had some interesting beliefs, that's for sure. But let's take a look. Lynette says, what does she care if there's a conflict? She gets the exposure now. She won't care if they retry down the road because of it. She'll be long gone. Yeah, probably some definite truth to that, but I don't know. Anytime I've ever tried to do something where I thought, oh, this is going to work out great. I'm going to get exposure. I'm going to get the big case. And it's just not, it just doesn't work out. There'll always be another case that comes around. That's what it boils down to. There'll always be another big case. Now, will it be that big one? I don't know, but it's certainly not worth potentially trying the case. And, if I'm the prosecutor, maybe they know about it. Maybe they, let me tell you another example. Okay. Well, we're going to change the names to protect the innocent, but I also was aware of another situation where an attorney represented a co-defendant in a multi-co-defendant case. And in a multi-co-defendant case, everybody gets their separate attorneys because your attorney only has one job: to look out for your best interest. Doesn't care if everybody else goes down hard, miserable, burns in hell. It doesn't matter. Their job is only to protect the client. That's it. Case gets over. Somebody says, hey, what about this other attorney? Could they represent somebody else? And I'm like, oh. Maybe it could be done. Maybe. But have to do the independent counsel stuff. And, it could be problems down the road. Somebody else jumps in. It's also associated with the case. Had another co-defendant. I got this. Clearly a conflict. And none of the independent counsel stuff was done in any way whatsoever. And person goes and talks to the prosecutor. The prosecutors, what do they care if there's a conflict? They're getting what they want. They're getting people rolling left and right. So, then you have this thing, dual loyalty. You can only have, the whole one master thing. You got to have one client. And when it comes down to it, who are you going to choose? And if you have to choose and you can't, guess what? You got to get off both people's cases, which only further delays it. So, like I said, I have absolute complete respect for people that disagree with my opinion, but I would just, if I was the attorney, I'd be like, hey, it sucks. It's the big one. But, there's lots of reasons why somebody want to stay on a case. The exposure, more money for the public defender's office, big budgets coming in because they're going to have to divert all these resources. Who knows? Like I said, I'd be interested. I would expect, just out of an abundance of caution, public defender's office hires independent counsel to go over and speak with Mr. Kohberger about this potential conflict. And hey, maybe they determine it's not a conflict, but what does it hurt to dot your I's and cross your T's? That's really what it boils down to. Chloe's mom, I believe BK, Brian Kohberger, is innocent. We will have to wait and see. Here we go. That was Teresa. Wouldn't that be grounds for a retrial? Potentially, yep. Like if you talk about my example, I'm just telling you. You just don't mess around on the ethical stuff. The ethical stuff is usually pretty simple. A couple of simple rules they teach you, and you can pass the multi-state professional responsibility test. General rule, this will treat you well every time. 1, communicate with your client, but not so much that you sleep with your client. Don't sleep with your client. Don't do that. Communicate. Don't drop off the face of the earth and don't do that. And third thing is don't steal their money. Pretty simple. You'd be surprised. Attorneys get in trouble all the time where they steal people's money. Don't steal their money. Simple rules. And fourth, don't represent somebody when there's an actual conflict, because it will create issues that you don't want to have to deal with, because then you get into all types of things related to, they make a bar complaint. They, file, post-conviction matters, 35Cs. And like I said, I'm not talking here from some kind of academic standpoint. I'm talking about practical reality when the rubber meets the road. Hell, get new counsel. Hey, I hear John Pryor may be free after, April, June. He could probably get prepped up for that, maybe delay it till whenever. Archibald, he's going to be available. He's death penalty guy. They'll have to just fly him up to the northern part of the state, so that's it. That's on that. So we will have to wait and see. Let's see. Okay, I don't think Kohberger will begin until 2025. Probably. I mean, think about it. If you think of the timing, they basically have now until the end of June, so 6 full months to be able to do work, investigate. Then after the preliminary hearing, remember, very low standard of proof at the preliminary hearing, the defense may say, that's the arraignment. They enter a plea of not guilty. Then they have 6 months from that date to get Mr. Koberger to trial. What are the odds that they're actually going to go to trial? And during that time period, then the prosecution has, I think, 60 days, 60 or 90 days. Don't hold me to that. In Idaho, as I remember the rule from the Lori Vallow matter, to say whether they're going to file the death penalty. And if the death penalty is coming into place, then you're going to have all this other stuff, mitigation. Oh, I need more time. I need more time. I still think you could do it, but it's probably going to be a year and a half, 2 years. So yes, Donna, I think that you are correct, particularly if that, if they go to you. He didn't waive speedy trial. He waived his right to a preliminary hearing within 14 days there in Idaho. Scott, when do you think the Murdaugh trial will start? I believe, now, Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, because I had to go to a jail visit this morning that took 2.5 hours. Ugh. But it was necessary, and I had to do it. But when I came back, they were still doing another veneer of potential jurors, but they were weeding them out pretty quickly. Can't be fair and impartial. Stand up, get out. Have a felony conviction, get up, get out. Disabled, get up, get out if you can. But they were getting rid of people. But then the judge said today, I think they had 108, little over 100 people that they believe are qualified jurors. So what they then should do tomorrow is they'll bring in those 108. They'll put them all in there and say, guess what? Congratulations. You made it. You've made the final cut. We're going to select a jury from the 108 of you. So they'll put, they have a number system, whether they're random or in some sort of order. They'll put them in, the top chair, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They'll, one, assuming this is your jury box, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. There's usually 14 chairs in a jury box, even though it's usually 12 for the 2 alternates. They'll have a couple more alternates. They'll put them in there. The prosecution will be able to ask some questions, and the defense will be able to ask some questions. Then they begin with, are there any challenges for cause? Somebody says, I've been really thinking about it, and 3 weeks is a really long time. I think I'm got this trip that I just planned. Yeah, that's it, a trip. And I'm fair. I'm not going to be fair and impartial. I think he's guilty. So they'll challenge that guy for cause. And then the other thing, it's a classic case. The prosecution will get rid of the ones that they think that the defense is going to like, and the defense is going to get rid of the potential jurors that the prosecution is going to like. And then you're stuck with the unknown. It'll be interesting to see how the judge does it, if he seats them individually, if he says, here's your 14 jurors. If there's a challenge for cause, then we'll bring up the next person that's in the back. I'm not exactly sure how the judge is going to do that, but I am thinking that probably by sometime late tomorrow afternoon, they will have a potential jury, and then they'll be able to start the presentation of evidence, obviously after opening statements. But understand, opening statements are not evidence. They're simply a roadmap that the parties believe that the evidence, they have a good faith basis that they believe evidence will come in at trial. Obviously, the defense does not need to do an opening statement. They can defer until their case in chief if they want to do that. Oh, I'm seeing Appalachian Crochet Designs. How trustworthy accepted is cell data for location during a crime? Seeing many doubts in public to data being accepted by jury. It depends what you're looking for. If it's just, hey, my cell phone is pinging and they're trying to triangulate it, not as accurate as, say, for example, you got GPS turned on and they can get those GPS coordinates from the phone. I am pretty skeptical. And remember, you have to remember all this cell phone tower data that comes from, the AT&Ts, the Verizons of the world. They do not collect this for law enforcement purposes. Law enforcement has kind of taken it over. It's actually collected, as I understand it from the experts, so that they can see if their cell phones and their towers are working correctly. That's why that data is saved. It's for the engineers, not for law enforcement. But law enforcement figured, hey, we can put this guy in this area. Sometimes it's good if they're saying, hey, somebody was traveling in this particular direction. You see the path that somebody's taking in a particular direction. How do you track them? Well, the car is moving here, cell phone tower's here. You stay on that cell phone tower as long as you get a good reception. And then when there's another cell phone tower that maybe there's a better reception, it connects to that. But let's say this one is down, this cell phone tower is down, and there's one way over here that it connects to. Maybe not as strong as signal, but it connects to that. So now you have a much bigger area where somebody could actually be in. And what can I say? That's not as accurate, like I said, as somebody that has GPS turned on. And, they're giving you a, 8, 16, 24 digit, grid location that you can plot. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Appalachian Crochet Designs. Beautifully Walking. Disabled or excluded from jury duty? No, but it seems to be that the judge was getting rid of people that were disabled. One of the qualifications is that you could get off of jury duty if you were in fact disabled. And it's not because they don't think that you would be a good juror, but you may have a disability that makes it uncomfortable for you to sit for 8 hours a day to listen to testimony. Now, certainly reasonable accommodations can be made. Say, okay, you can stand up. We need to take more frequent restroom breaks, something along those lines. But apparently in South Carolina, there were a couple of things that I had never heard of, actually. One of them was, have you ever been convicted of a felony, anything punishable by more than 1 year in jail? Well, that's technically a felony. Heck, we have misdemeanors where I live in where you could get up to 2 years in custody on a misdemeanor. So that would disqualify somebody in South Carolina. They're like, if you have a felony conviction, you can't serve. Here, that's not an issue. That's not a disqualifier to serve on a jury. There were a couple of other things. Basically, I've always heard, make sure you can, you have to be able to read, write, and speak the English language because that's what all the instructions are in. And there they said if you have less than a 6th grade education in the Murdaugh case, the judge was like, you can't testify. So hopefully that answers your question, Beautiful Walking. Scott, thanks for sharing your expertise. Have you had a chance to follow the Larry Millett hearing this past week? I have not. I'm sorry. But I will try to look it up. It's just been a little busy lately. This whole week has been, today's only Tuesday, but it literally feels like Friday. It literally feels like a Friday. Maybe because we've been arriving at the office so early. We were all excited that the Murdaugh trial was going to begin. We're all ready for it. Frank gets here at 6:30 to make sure everything's up and ready to go. And then it didn't start on time. Then there wasn't going to be a feed, and then it was audio, but we were here. He was here bright and early. Tomorrow, I think they're starting 9 a.m. Eastern time. So it's more of a regular day than the 6:30 type of thing. So no, it was 11 o'clock Eastern. So yeah. Quick Flip 7, $10 super chat. True or false? Do criminal defense attorneys really want to know or care whether or not their client is guilty? It depends. It depends. Thank you for loving the channel. Quick Flip. Let me tell you what it means. Obviously, if a client comes to you and they basically tell you, I did it, they're not going to be able to testify. However, if they came to you and said, hey, I did it, I killed the guy, he deserved killing. Why does he deserve killing? He was coming at me. He attacked me. It was self-defense. Well, that's his version of events. Guess what? There's a legal instruction that says he can legally do that under the law if he was under fear of death or a serious bodily injury. Then it's okay to do that. So you have to have your client tell you that. You want the truth. As a general understanding, if a client wants to tell me, listen, that's their prerogative. My general experience is just tell me the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you did it, you did it. I'm not going to represent you less. I'm not going to judge you. I don't care. We've talked about this before. The only thing that matters is what can they prove in court, right? There was a billboard that was going around. It was kind of a meme, I think. I don't know if it was a real billboard, if it was fake, but it was of an attorney somewhere, and it said, just because you did it doesn't mean you're guilty. And he's not wrong on that. I've had many a client tell me they did something. Okay, but the government couldn't prove it. So technically, they're not guilty. The government couldn't prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Maybe they couldn't file charges. Maybe they dismissed it. Who knows exactly what it matters? But it doesn't matter. But I look at it this way. Listen, if you come to hire me, hopefully you think, I know what the heck I'm talking about. And the best way for me to know is for you to be completely truthful and candid. And if that means telling me, hey, I did it, but I don't think they can prove it, or I say, yeah, okay, but I don't think they can prove it, we'll just have to wait and see. If there's something bad coming down the way, I've told clients this, I tell them all the time, listen, you probably should tell me the good, the bad, and the ugly, because if I need to zig instead of zag, that's probably something you should know. If I go to court and I get my trousers pulled down around my ankles, I'm going to look really silly. But you, the client, you're going to go to prison. So if I could have avoided that little zigzagginess entirely, then, we could have done that. But if you didn't tell me that, what am I supposed to do? So literally had clients like, yeah, I guess I should have told you that. They look over at the client. Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I should have told you that. Oh, really? You think? Why didn't you tell me that? Well, I don't know. I just didn't think it was important. Really? You thought that, you were going to judge. I don't care. We go to court, man. It's about representing your client. That's it. Don't care. Even when I was in the military, it was like, wow, that's going to embarrass the Marine Corps. If you take this to trial, well, that's what my client wants to do. I used to have to tell people, like, I don't care if the Congress decided not to fund the Marine Corps if this was an embarrassment, to the United States Marine Corps, the United States of America. My only duty is to the client at that point. That's the only thing that matters. So, quick flip. Hope that answers your question. Like I said, I really don't care. I just tell you, be honest with me. If you want to play games, I've had conversations with people. They tell me their story, and I literally sit there like, okay, is that your story? This isn't my first rodeo. I've done this before. I kind of get the feeling that you're holding back a little bit. And then next thing you know, it's a trust thing. They have to get to trust you oftentimes. Sometimes they just don't come out and tell you every little detail. It takes a little bit of trust. And like I said, I don't mind. I've had many a client over the years to be like, dude, I'm so guilty, but we can get off of this, man. I will refer you clients now to eternity. And they have. It just depends. So that's the one thing that matters. Let's see here. He was so fascinated with imprisoned BTK. Sally, he was so fascinated with imprisoned BTK, the BTK killer. Now maybe he can roommate with him. That's good. Oh, shout out there to our hardest working mod in show business. Want to become a Patreon member? Click here, sign up. because we'll be going over to our Patreon show where the conversation will continue with one addition. Well, two additions, actually. The first, you can call in. That's right. We will give you the Crime Talk line where you can call in and ask me anything you want to talk about. Next, right there, the Magic 8 Ball. That's right. We always try to end our Patreon show with asking the Magic 8 Ball a question. I can already tell what the question is going to be tonight. Is there, in fact, a conflict of interest in the Brian Kohberger case? And we'll just have to wait and see for the Magic 8 Ball answer. Because, hey, if you don't know and things could go different directions, what's the easiest way to solve it? That's right. The Magic 8 Ball. That's right. Scott, how do you like the judge for the Murdaugh case? So far, I like him. He's been he's kind of old school judge, man. Like, let's move this thing along. There's so much, big brouhaha that, there's literally news crews from around the world there. They have all the tents set up outside, and he's moving along pretty quickly. It's clearly his courtroom. Sometimes, we've seen situations where a very dominant personality can really run the place if there's a weak judge. And the judge is not weak in the Murdaugh case at all, and is moving the case along. And I think it's interesting as well that, obviously, when I first saw the Murdaugh case, I pronounced it Murdaugh because that's the way it's spelled, Daugh, but it's pronounced with a doc. Murdaugh is what I've been told, and everybody, well, down there refers to him as Murdaugh, but the judge is calling him Murdaugh, which I think is interesting. That's kind of like his own little way of maybe getting a little jab in, I think. I know I've done that sometimes where, if I don't particularly like somebody, I'll mispronounce their name or something like that, particularly if they're in cross-examination. I think it's, yeah. Oh, where was it? It went by so fast. Oh, here it is. Oh, man, so fast. Comments coming in so fast. Scott, I miss your Magic 8 Ball and the yellow crime scene tape. Well, we're not done resetting. I know some people, I think for the most part, most people said that they like the new setup that we have. We're going to give it a shot. It's like all things in life. Some people are like, oh, I liked your bookcases and everything. We're like, other people are like, oh, it's too stuffy. Some people are like, I love your new stuff. I like this sign. You need to add some dark color to the back wall or something. I mean, I get it. I appreciate everybody's words of advice. It's like anything in life. We're going to go for it, tweak it, make it better. We've changed studios once or twice before, and then we went back to the old one. So, it just depends. We're going to try it. Just hold tight. Maybe it'll grow on you if you don't like it. And if you love it, hopefully you do it. And the crime scene tape, I thought it was back here. It is. Maybe you just can't see it. Yeah, the computer. Oh, the computer blocks it. See, the crime scene tape. Police line. Official police line tape. Police line. Do not, look, never even been used yet. So it's still there. Gene, don't panic. Stick with us. I remember the days when you were in your kitchen. That's true. We would do it live occasionally during the Chris Watts case, where it was like breaking news, dun 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 dun, dun 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 dun, and we would do a breaking news literally from my iPad, which I don't care for the pink. Well, it's funny because in real life, that's not pink. It's red. But for some reason, the lighting, we're still working on it. But the show must go on. Okay, see, Mirrors Multimedia, like the old school better. I get it. It's a little bit of a mix of everything. We'll try to see what we can do. Okay, we'll see what we can do. But it's not pink. Okay, but Mama Pink says the pink is the best part. So it just shows you that you cannot ever please anybody. Scott, maybe a chalk outline of a body in the crime scene tape. There you go. And hey, somebody said, well, I wish you could have done the CrimeTalk fingerprint outline, but they couldn't do that on the sign. We tried it. Sometimes things work out, they don't. Just be patient. If it doesn't work out, I will be the one that pulls the plug if it doesn't work. But I think for the most part, generally people like it. There's some people, I get it. There's always, but we tried to keep a lot of it. Still have a lot of the same stuff behind here. We got the Magic 8 Ball. And then we have the sculpture. And I actually had lots of people asking about the sculpture. This was a gift from the lovely Miss Kristen. And let me see if I can find. She sent me the text of the artist of it. I can't remember his name, but it's so good. The guy is, I think it's just amazing. I think it really kind of sums up really what you have to do when you're doing criminal defense work. And not that you're being sneaky, right? You have to be prepared. It's almost like, when they're sneaking into Troy, they sneak in as the horse, right? It's almost kind of like Sun Tzu, The Art of War, where you do what they think you wouldn't do, because you only got one shot. And yes, the prosecution has to tell you everything, that they have to turn over. But the defense doesn't. You don't have to tell them what your strategy is, your theory, anything along those lines. You just do it. So really, really love this. This is still in the background. On top of my Atlas Shrugged book, which I highly recommend to anybody. And, it'll change your life the way you think. Just telling you. And then obviously we have our polished propeller back there. And of course our little silver YouTube thing. But, if you like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff, get us to 1 million, then we get a gold one, I do believe. And Frank and I would like a gold one. I'm not going to lie. We'd like to get 1 million subscribers. I think we're 230,000 or something right now, something like that. And then over here, still got the books, got Lady Justice, got our cowboy, our bronze there, because cowboys that are bronze are just really, really cool. So just the way it is. All right. So what else we got? We got the Alec Murdaugh trial. I'm telling you, when that little kid, Paul Murdaugh, who looks like a complete punk, crashed that boat into a piling on a bridge near Parris Island, South Carolina, where I'm personally familiar with it because the Southern Command for CrimeTalk is down there, and hopefully will be again soon someday. We'll talk about that more in the Patreon hour. But I just knew there was something not right. This is a family that had basically controlled the district attorney's office. They call them solicitors down there for the last 100 years. They got favoritism. It was obvious that they were getting favoritism. And that's the angle, I guess, that we originally kind of were following. That I was like, wow, that's funny. Like they get, somebody got a free pass here. And it wasn't months until Paul Murdaugh was actually charged with vehicular boating, drunk while boating, killed somebody, a young woman by the name of Mallory Beach. And, the kid clearly got preferential treatment. I don't think he was actually ever booked in, never really had handcuffs put on him when he was remanded. Totally treated with kid gloves. And it looks like, the local police maybe weren't doing their job. So they bring in the state police from South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, AKA SLED, and they took over the investigation. And then all this stuff started coming about thefts and, ultimately, he's now accused. Alec Murdaugh is accused of killing his wife, Maggie, son Paul, accused of stealing millions of dollars from clients, his own law firm, pays an old client to try to whack him by putting a bull in his head, make it look like his was a suicide or a murder. I'm sorry, a murder, so that he could get the what's the guy? His son Buster would get the money. So from the insurance policy, didn't quite work out. That guy's going to probably testify against him. I mean, you just never know. But I'm telling you, so here you have a guy completely fallen from grace. Family, the prosecution's theory is that they're broke. All the things were falling apart. And today there was a motion that they were talking about where they wanted to discuss being able to put on evidence of Alec Murdaugh's financial wealth, is the way I understood it, to basically show he has plenty of money. He doesn't need to go kill his wife and kids. Regardless of what happened, he would never have to work again another day in his life. So it's going to get good. Yeah, Pamela, you knew there would be a lot more coming. That's right. Just had a feeling. And next thing you know, they're interviewing, they're doing Netflix, HBO, I think, has done one as well. And there's an attorney in there. I think it was the Netflix one, I think. But there's an attorney down there, a guy by the name of Mike McCloskey, that showed up. And he talked about how he kind of knew the family and what have you. I did a trial with Mike McCloskey. He was a civilian retained on a criminal court-martial. I was detailed defense counsel, and I got to do a trial with Mike McCloskey. I'm like, I know Mike McCloskey. He was the one that gave me advice when I said I was going to get out and go do my own thing. And I didn't want to take a bar exam. So I'll come back to Colorado. And Mike McCloskey gave me some great advice. He says, when you go into practice for yourself, young man, remember, the overhead never goes down. And I'm like, okay, didn't really understand what that meant, other than now I do. Your expenses to run a business never go down. They only go up. And the more you grow, the more expensive and more costs and overhead is every month. Just saying. So anyway, I think it's going to be a great case. If I'm wrong, I will tell you so. But we got really good attorneys. Saw some of the prosecuting attorneys today at the motions hearing that they were doing outside the presence of the potential jurors regarding the qualifications of the testing lab for the firearms expert. Basically saying, the lab shouldn't be qualified or something like that. I didn't hear the result, but I'll check up on it. But I think if the court's ruled on it yet, I'm not sure if they got done with that, but they're going to allow it in. It's cross-examination, but that's about it. And G.G. McClevey is covering Murdaugh trial for you. Okay, for some other network. Yeah, but seriously, really, I mean, no disrespect, but a lot of those channels, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a couple of channels, and I saw it the other day. I was like, they have there's two attorneys in town that are, one's on Law and Order, Law and Crime, whatever it is. I don't know what it is. And I look at myself, I'm like, okay. I mean, no disrespect, but I mean, I think the one guy was a prosecutor for a while. Maybe the other guy I think was a public defender for a while. But none of them have ever tried like the big case. They're like DUI attorneys. I was just like, okay. But, some people, whatever. Tara Gonzalez, or Terry Gonzalez. You got to wait for the Patreon. It's right there. Magic 8 Ball. Got the old school Magic 8 Ball, the one that's, I've had this for, probably 18 years. And then we have the new high-speed, low-drag Magic 8 Ball that doesn't have water, but you push it and it spins. So, well worth it. Well worth it. All right. Just looking here to see if there's anything else. Don't want to miss any. Try miss any comments here. Yes. Give any advice. Hopefully his uncle are there for him. Yep. Buster Murdaugh settled, for $275. He probably had insurance policy. He doesn't have any money, I don't think. But, they were just trying to get the kid out of the lawsuit. The Mallard Beach case is going after the civil suit. They're going after the convenience store that sold the alcohol to, the group of young people, including Paul Murdaugh. That's where the money is, because that's where the insurance money is. We know that Murdaugh doesn't have large sums of money. He certainly has a lot less, because remember, the court gave his attorneys $600,000 to handle his murder case. $600,000. That'd be a good day. I mean, he's got 2 attorneys, they got staff, they got investigators, they got expenses, they got overhead, right? They got some overhead going on. But the reality of it is $600,000. That can go a long way. I don't know what the attorneys are charging, but my guess is they're probably charging $1,000 an hour. Just my guess. But if you saw Mr. Alec Murdaugh today, he looked a little nervous. He did. He looked a little nervous, but I don't see him every day, so I can't say that what his real thoughts are. So what's going on in his mind? He's got to be scared to death. I don't care how many times you've been trial. If it's your trial, you're scared to death. It's scary, and and people don't realize how much work goes into trial. Yeah, there he is. Probably better have his image consultant people tell him don't cross your arms there. Maybe it's cold. I don't think so. I think he just doesn't know what else to do. Everyone's milling about smartly, and there he is with his one of his attorneys. So it's gonna be interesting. I don't know. Maybe I could get down. I'm trying to think how it's going to work out, because next week I was supposed to have a trial, but that's going to resolve tomorrow. Who knows? Maybe we fly down to South Carolina, Frank. Could be fun. Could be fun. Standing on the steps of the courthouse here at the Alex Murdaugh trial. That'd be fun. All right. Hey, I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. If you'd like to continue the conversation, if you'd like to call in and talk about anything you'd like to talk about, guess what? We'll give you the number when you show up on our Patreon page so that you can call in and speak with me, Scott Reich, harmless little fuzzball. We are always so nice to everybody on the phone because, hey, you're a Patreon member. You're not just a subscriber. You're a family member when you're a Patreon member. So come join us. Have a wonderful night. We'll see you next time on CrimeTalk.